I stood in the corner of a ballroom at the Four Seasons Hotel in Seattle, wearing a dress I'd bought off a clearance rack for $74, holding a check that felt less like a gift and more like a final verdict. Outside, the Puget Sound glittered under a June sunset, but inside, under the glow of a $1,000 chandelier, my sister was cutting a cake that cost more than my first car. 280 guests. Orchids flown in from Thailand. A 12-piece band. And me holding a thin envelope my mother had just pressed into my palm with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That's all you're getting," she whispered. Not cruel, not loud, just final, like a door clicking shut. But the check for $500 wasn't what made me walk out that night. It was what she said next to the man standing beside me. The man who would later help me build something she couldn't even imagine. Before I go on, if this story resonates with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe to Revenge Stories. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now, and what time is it where you are? My name is Chloe Brennan and I'm 31 years old. But let me take you back 3 years, to a Saturday night in June inside a ballroom at the Four Seasons in Seattle. The night I finally stopped trying to earn a love that was never really mine to win. I grew up in Bellevue, Washington, one of those impeccably manicured suburbs where every lawn looks like it was trimmed with surgical scissors, and every SUV in the driveway costs more than a down payment on a house anywhere else in the country. We lived in a 5-bedroom craftsman on a cul-de-sac where the neighbors waved, but never really knew your name. From the outside, the Brennan family looked like a spread in a lifestyle magazine. From the inside, we operated on a tiered system, and I was always on the bottom rung. My older sister Vanessa was the sun our entire family orbited around. Valedictorian, captain of the crew team, early admission to Stanford for pre-med. She moved through life with this effortless grace, like she'd been born knowing the world would make space for her. And it did, because our mother made sure of it. Margaret Brennan, 56, had been a corporate lawyer before she retired, to raise us, which really meant she traded billable hours for the full-time job of molding Vanessa into the successful woman she herself had once dreamed of becoming. Every penny, every connection, every ounce of strategic planning went into Vanessa's future. And Vanessa absorbed it all, hardened into exactly what our mother wanted. A rising dermatologist engaged to a boy from a family with a street named after them. Then there was me. I was the one who wrote stories in composition notebooks instead of memorizing flashcards. The one who won a statewide poetry contest junior year and brought the certificate home to a dinner table where my mother glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Chloe, but words don't pay the bills." That certificate went into a drawer in my bedroom. Vanessa's trophies, her academic awards, her Stanford acceptance letter, those lived in a custom-built display case in the living room, lit from within like museum pieces. Guests always commented on it. That was the point. One daughter who would save skin, one daughter who wrote poems. Guess which one got featured in the Christmas newsletter. I graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in English literature and a GPA that my family never once asked about. Landed a job as a junior copywriter at a small marketing agency in downtown Seattle. Dawson & Co., 12 employees, an office overlooking a parking garage on 2nd Avenue. Salary, $42,000 a year before taxes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The problem was the commute. I lived in a studio apartment in Capitol Hill, but my parents had co-signed the lease because my rental history was thin. And they'd co-signed my car loan too, $22,000 for a used Toyota Corolla with 40,000 miles. Monthly payment, $387. On paper it was generous. In practice it was leverage. My mother kept the co-signature like a trump card she could play whenever I stepped out of line. Every holiday dinner, every phone call where I mentioned wanting to freelance or travel or do anything that didn't fit her blueprint, she'd remind me. "We're still on that loan, Chloe. Don't forget who helped you get that car." My father, Robert, 62, retired engineer, would sit at the head of the table and nod along. He was the kind of man who believed that keeping the peace was the same as being a good father. He'd look at his plate, chew his food slowly, and when my mother was finished, he'd say, "Your mother has a point," without ever knowing what the point actually was. I met Nathan Keller at a cafe in Pioneer Square. He was sitting in the corner with a laptop open to a design portfolio, a cold brew sweating on the table, and this quiet focus that I mistook for aloofness until he looked up and smiled. Nathan was 30, a freelance web developer. He'd been on his own since 19, after his parents divorced, and his dad moved to Arizona and his mom remarried a guy who didn't want stepkids around. He taught himself to code through online forums and YouTube tutorials, built a client base one project at a time. His savings account was modest, but it existed, which was more than most people I knew could say. What I loved about Nathan wasn't that he was ambitious in the way my mother understood ambition, corner offices and job titles. He was ambitious in the way that mattered. He showed up every single day for his work, for me, for the life we were slowly building in a tiny apartment with thrift store furniture and a shared Google sheet tracking every dollar. My mother found out about Nathan 3 months in. Her assessment came over Sunday dinner at their house. A freelancer, she set her fork down like she was placing evidence at a crime scene. So neither of you has what most people would call a stable income. That same month, Vanessa got engaged to Dr. Philip Ashford, a cardiologist from a family that had donated a wing to the Seattle Children's Hospital. My mother hosted the engagement party herself, catered champagne, 60 guests in the backyard. Vanessa found a partner who matches her trajectory, my mother told me at that party, glancing at Nathan across the lawn. You found a partner who matches your circumstances. Nathan heard it. He didn't flinch, but I saw his jaw tighten, the way it does when you're swallowing something you'll never forget. 4 weeks before Vanessa's wedding, Nathan proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was a Tuesday night in our apartment, rain against the window, pasta on the stove, and he said, "I don't have a ring yet, but I know I want this to be my life, you me this." I said yes before he finished the sentence. We told my family the following Sunday. Vanessa smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. My father said, "That's wonderful, sweetheart," and turned back to the football game. My mother looked at my left hand, saw the simple sterling silver band Nathan had given me as a placeholder, and said, "Have you confirmed the florist for Vanessa's centerpieces?" Vanessa's wedding planning was a military operation. The Four Seasons, a planner from New York, flowers imported from Ecuador, a custom Vera Wang gown with a train so long it needed its own attendant. The budget had ballooned past $300,000, and my mother talked about it the way people discuss a smart investment, necessary, strategic, a reflection of the family's standing. My role in the wedding was assigned, not discussed. I would manage the guest book table. A small podium by the entrance, tucked behind a pillar, away from the ceremony, away from the reception, away from every photograph. I'd greet guests, hand them a pen, smile. Vanessa texted me the week before. "You can bring Nathan, just don't let him talk to Philip's colleagues about freelancing, it's not the same world." I stared at that text for a long time. I should have said something, I didn't. The wedding was in 5 weeks. I didn't know yet that it would be the last time I'd sit at my family's table. The Four Seasons ballroom looked like someone had emptied a museum into a greenhouse. Crystal chandeliers dripping with light, centerpieces of white peonies and trailing jasmine so tall you had to lean around them to see the person across the table. Gold-rimmed chargers, 3 forks per setting, a string quartet playing pachelbel in the corner. 280 guests in formal wear, sipping champagne from flutes so delicate they looked like they might shatter if you breathed on them wrong. I arrived early as instructed. My dress was black, simple, cap-sleeved. Purchased online during a clearance event, $74. I'd tried it on 4 times in our bathroom mirror, turning this way and that, telling myself it was fine. It was always going to be fine. Nobody was looking at me. Vanessa floated through the pre-ceremony photos in her Vera Wang, a cathedral-length veil trailing behind her like a promise the world had already agreed to keep. She looked beautiful, she always did. My mother stood in the front row in champagne silk, a photographer capturing every angle of her misty-eyed pride, and I thought, she has never once looked at me the way she's looking at Vanessa right now. Not once. After the ceremony, I took my place at the guest book table. I smiled, I handed out pens. I said congratulations 63 times to people who didn't know my name. One of my mother's old law school friends, a woman in pearls who'd had 3 glasses of champagne, squinted at me as she signed. "Oh, you're the other Brennan daughter." I kept smiling. "I'm Chloe." Right, Margaret always talks about Vanessa, she must be so proud." Nathan was seated at table 16, near the kitchen entrance, next to 2 of Philip's distant cousins who spent the night discussing tax brackets. The toasts were finished. Vanessa and Philip had their first dance to an Etta James song. The room had that warm, champagne-hazed glow that settles over expensive parties when the bill is already paid. I'd left the guest book table to find Nathan. I wanted to sit with him, eat something, maybe steal one quiet moment before the night ended, but I only made it halfway across the ballroom before my mother appeared at my elbow. "Chloe, come here." She pulled me toward a corner near the bar, semi-private but not entirely. A few guests at a nearby high top could hear if they listened. A waiter was restocking champagne flutes 2 feet away. "I know you and Nathan are planning something," she said. Her tone was the same one she used when I was 14, and she caught me writing in a journal instead of studying for the SATs. Disappointed but unsurprised. You asked me last week if we'd help with your wedding. So here. She pressed a white envelope into my hand. Standard size. Light. I opened it. A check, $500, written in my mother's neat cursive. Memo line, wedding contribution, Chloe. I looked up. She was watching my face the way you watch a test subject. That's all you're getting, she said softly, barely above the music, but the waiter heard. I saw his hand pause on the champagne flute. The woman at the high-top table glanced over, then quickly looked away, the way people do when they've witnessed something they wish they hadn't. $500. My sister got 300,000. I got 500 and a memo line that made it official. I folded the check, put it in my clutch, looked my mother in the eye. I didn't say a word, and I think that scared her more than anything I could have said. I walked back to table 16. Nathan saw my face before I sat down. He reached for my hand under the table. What happened? Later, I said, not here. But here found us anyway. My mother appeared at our table 10 minutes later. She had another glass of champagne, not enough to slur, but enough to remove whatever thin membrane of restraint had kept her cruelty semi-private. She stood at the head of the table, and 6 strangers looked up at her. She looked at Nathan, not at me, at him. I hope you're not expecting us to fund your wedding too. She smiled, the kind of smile that's really a scalpel. We don't invest in sinking ships. The table went silent. A man in a Brioni suit stared at his water glass. A woman beside him suddenly found her napkin fascinating. Philip's college roommate, seated 2 chairs down, opened his mouth, then closed it. Nathan didn't move, he didn't raise his voice. But I watched the tendon in his neck pull tight, the way a guitar string does right before it snaps, and something in me cracked open, not broke, cracked open. The difference matters. I could take it when she ranked me. I could take the glass cabinet, the guest book table, the $74 dress, the $500 check. But this man who built his life from nothing, who never asked my family for a single thing, did not deserve to be gutted in public by a woman who didn't know his name until 4 months ago. I stood up, leaned close to Nathan. We're leaving. He nodded, no hesitation. As we crossed the parking lot, gravel crunching under our shoes, I said the first clear thing I'd said all night. I need to refinance that car loan tomorrow. Nathan opened the passenger door of my Corolla for me. I already have the paperwork pulled up on my laptop. By 7 the next morning, my phone had 14 missed calls from my father, 5 text messages from Vanessa, and a silence from my mother that was louder than all of them combined. Robert, please call us, your mother is very upset. Vanessa, you left early and everyone noticed. People were asking where you went. You ruined my reception, Chloe, I hope you're happy. Vanessa again, this was supposed to be my day. And my mother, nothing, not a word, because Margaret Brennan didn't chase. She waited for you to come back, apologizing. I didn't reply to any of them. Nathan and I sat at our kitchen table, the small one from IKEA that wobbled on the left side, with his laptop between us and 2 cups of coffee going cold. On the screen, refinancing options for the auto loan. My credit score glowed in the corner of the browser. 695, borderline, enough to qualify at a higher interest rate, but enough. If we go through a credit union, we can get 7.4%, Nathan said, scrolling. It's higher than what your parents got, but the loan transfers entirely to your name. They come off the title, clean break. A clean break, the words sat in the air like something holy. I looked at the number, $22,000, give or take, and for the first time I saw it clearly. Not as debt, as a chain. A chain my mother rattled every time I stepped out of line. And here was Nathan at 7 in the morning with paperwork already pulled up, showing me exactly how to cut it. I stared at the $695 on the screen and thought, why did I let a $22,000 loan keep me in a family that priced me at $500? Have you ever realized that the thing trapping you was smaller than you thought? That the lock was cheaper than the cage? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. Within 72 hours, I had a plan. Within 30 days, I had a new city. 2 weeks after the wedding, the story had already been written, just not by me. My Aunt Carolyn, my father's sister, the one who sends birthday cards with $20 bills inside and never takes sides, called me on a Wednesday afternoon. She didn't say hello first. She said, I thought you should know what your mother's telling people. The narrative, as Margaret had constructed it, was clean and efficient. Chloe left the wedding in a jealous rage. She couldn't handle seeing Vanessa happy. She's always been the difficult one. We gave her money and she threw it back in our faces. Every family dinner, every phone call with cousins, every conversation at the grocery store with neighbors who'd known us since we were in car seats. The story spread the way my mother intended. quietly, thoroughly, like wallpaper paste. Then came Instagram. Vanessa posted from her honeymoon in Santorini, standing on a cliff overlooking the caldera, Dior sunglasses pushed up on her head, Philip's arm around her waist, the Aegean Sea glittering behind them. Caption, grateful for family who shows up, some people can't handle other people's blessings. 63 comments, hearts, fire emojis, you're so graceful about it, babe, living your best chapter. I saw it because a college friend screenshot it and sent it to me with a single question mark. I stared at the photo for 10 seconds, then I closed the app, opened my laptop and went back to the pitch email I was drafting for a potential client, a small bookstore in Portland that needed help with their social media. Aunt Carolyn texted once more that week. Short, I saw what happened at the wedding. Your mother was wrong, that's all I'll say. Not an ally, just a witness. Sometimes that's enough to keep you sane. They can have the story I told Nathan that night. I'll have the results. The phone rang on a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the wedding, 10 days after I'd submitted the refinancing application to a credit union in Seattle. I saw the name on the screen and felt my stomach drop the way it does when you hear a fire alarm in a building you thought was safe. Mom, she never called. She summoned. She waited. She let silence do the work. The fact that she was calling meant she'd heard something she didn't like. I understand you're planning to move. Her voice was flat, measured, the tone she used with contractors who tried to overcharge her. Someone told me you're looking at apartments out of state. I said nothing, let her fill the space. If you leave, Chloe, don't expect us to keep co-signing that loan. I'll call the bank Monday morning. You can't unilaterally remove yourself from a co-signed loan, Mom. That's not how it works. A pause. I'd never cited a fact back at her before. It landed like a stone in still water. Excuse me, the loan is a binding agreement. You can't withdraw your name without the lender's consent and a refinance, which, I kept my voice level, professional, the way Nathan had coached me the night before, is exactly what I've already started. The silence on her end was different this time. Not the silence of power, the silence of someone who reaches for a lever and finds it gone. 5 days later, the credit union approved the refinance. Interest rate 7.4%, higher than the original. I didn't care, the loan transferred to my name alone. Margaret and Robert Brennan were removed from the title entirely. I sent one email, Mom, Dad, the auto loan has been refinanced under my name only. You're no longer on it. Thank you for the original cosign. Chloe, professional, brief, no emotion, the leash was cut. 30 days after the wedding, I packed everything I owned into the Corolla. It didn't take long, 2 suitcases, 1 box of books, poetry collections, dog-eared novels, a worn copy of Asterisk Bird by Bird, my laptop, a folder of client samples I'd built at Dawson & Co. a succulent Nathan had given me on our first anniversary that had somehow survived 2 Seattle winters on a windowsill. I'd put in my notice at the agency the week before. My boss, a decent woman named Patricia who wore the same black blazer every Tuesday, shook my hand and said, "You're better than this place, Chloe. I'm sorry I couldn't pay you enough to prove it." She wrote me a reference letter on company letterhead that same afternoon. Nathan had already transitioned his freelance clients to fully remote. His laptop worked the same in Portland as it did in Seattle. That was the beauty of his work and the thing my mother never understood about it. It traveled. We chose Portland because Nathan had done the math. Lower cost of living than Seattle, a growing creative scene, a city that felt like possibility instead of expectation. Our bank account the morning we left, $5,800 combined, everything we had. My father sent a text as we crossed the Washington-Oregon state line. "Are you safe?" I waited until we stopped for gas outside Vancouver to reply. One word, yes. Nothing from my mother, nothing from Vanessa, just Robert asking the question he should have been asking for 29 years. The interstate stretched ahead of us. I-5 south, then the long approach into Portland. In the rearview mirror, Washington shrank to nothing. Ahead, a green highway sign, Portland, 47 miles. "You okay?" Nathan asked. "Ask me in a year." Our first apartment in Portland was a studio on Southeast Division Street. 450 square feet of warped hardwood floors, a radiator that clanked like a percussion instrument, and a window that looked out onto a parking lot where someone had spray-painted, "Make IT happen" on a dumpster. Rent, $1,200 a month. We didn't have a bed, not at first. Nathan borrowed an air mattress from a guy he'd met in an online coding forum who happened to live in Southeast. That first night we lay on it side by side, listening to the radiator clank through its cycle, and I stared at the ceiling. A water stain in the corner shaped like a lopsided heart, and the thought came uninvited. What if my mother was right? I didn't say it out loud. I didn't have to. Nathan rolled over and said, "It'll get better, it has to." We didn't drive 300 miles to quit. I started working the next day. Barista at a coffee shop on North Williams Avenue, $13 an hour plus tips. The owner was a woman named Alina who made her own almond milk and called everyone hun. I poured lattes from 6 to 2, then came home, showered and sat at the kitchen counter, which was also our dining table, which was also my desk, and opened Upwork. The first month I landed 3 gigs. Social media management for a vintage clothing store in Selwood, $300. A flyer design for a food cart called Big Mike's Barbecue, $200. An email campaign for a yoga studio in Northwest Portland, $600. Total freelance income month 1, $1,100. Combined with barista tips and Nathan's freelance web development, we cleared rent barely. Groceries came from Fred Mayer, and I learned that rice, beans, and optimism could stretch further than I'd ever imagined. Freedom tastes different when you can't afford furniture. In March, 4 months into Portland, I signed my first real contract. Not an Upwork gig. A real client with a real scope of work and a signed agreement. A boutique hotel on Division Street called the Hawthorne. 12 rooms, exposed brick, a rooftop bar that served craft cocktails to tourists who wanted to feel like locals. The owner needed a full brand refresh, new logo, social media strategy, website copy. Fee, $4,200. I was so excited I called Nathan from the parking lot and nearly cried. 3 weeks later, the owner, a man named Jeffrey who wore linen shirts and changed his mind the way other people change socks, killed the project. He didn't like the color palette, then he didn't like the font, then he didn't like the vibe. He cancelled the contract, paid 50% as the kill clause required, and moved on to a buddy from San Francisco who'd do it for free, $2,100. 3 weeks of work, $200 out of pocket for Canva Pro and stock photography. I sat on the concrete steps outside our apartment building that evening, holding a bottle of water, staring at the traffic on Division Street. Nathan came out with a cup of coffee, the good stuff from Alina's shop, which he'd bought with the last of his tip money from helping her rearrange the back storage. Hey, he said, sitting down. Your credit score hit 710 last month. The refinance is working. He paused. Also, remember that woman at the cafe? The one who asked about your food cart campaign for Big Mike's, Miranda something. She left her card, said you should call. Who's Miranda? I don't know yet, but she said your Big Mike's work was the best local campaign she'd seen in 6 months. I took the card, held it between 2 fingers like it might dissolve. Miranda Cole, marketing consultant. Portland, Oregon. I pinned the $2,100 check from Jeffrey to the kitchen wall with a magnet. Wrote next to it in Sharpie, first real payment, first real lesson. I didn't go looking for Vanessa's Instagram. The algorithm found me. One night in April, sitting cross-legged on the air mattress because we still hadn't bought a couch, I was scrolling through industry hashtags for hospitality marketing ideas when the app decided I might also enjoy a photo of my sister standing in her new kitchen. Colonial-style house in a suburb of Seattle, 5 bedrooms, marble island, brass pendant lights, fresh white subway tile backsplash that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The caption read, "Dream home with my dream man." The house was in Medina, bought with the $300,000 wedding gift as a down payment, plus a mortgage Philip had co-signed. My parents' investment appreciating nicely, or so the caption suggested. I started to close the app, then stopped. Something was off. The post had fewer likes than Vanessa's usual content. She had over 200,000 followers, mostly patients and lifestyle-adjacent accounts. And buried in the comments, a friend had written, "Where, Philip, haven't seen you two together in a while." Vanessa's reply, "He's busy saving lives." The exclamation marks were doing a lot of heavy lifting. I closed the app, opened my laptop, pulled up the pitch email I was drafting for a bed and breakfast in Hood River that needed help with their booking funnel. Vanessa's kitchen had a 6-burner Wolf range. I was sitting at an IKEA table I'd assembled wrong twice. The legs were slightly uneven, so my laptop tilted 1 degree to the left always. Every email I'd sent for 4 months had been written at a slant. I didn't know it then, but Vanessa's dream home was already worth $80,000 less than what they'd paid for it. The Seattle housing market had softened, and Philip wasn't busy saving lives. He was busy ruining theirs. May was the month that nearly broke us. 5 months in Portland. The numbers on my banking app read like a countdown, $1,500 in checking. Rent due in 6 days, $1,200, which left $300 for everything else. Groceries, gas, phone bill, the internet we needed to keep freelancing, the Canva Pro subscription I couldn't cancel without losing access to my client templates. Then Nathan lost his biggest client, a tech startup in San Francisco that had been paying him $5,000 a month for web development, sent a 2-line email. restructuring our budget, pausing all contractor agreements. Thanks for everything. Thanks for everything, the corporate equivalent of a shrug. That month our combined income dropped 45%. We ate rice and black beans 4 nights in a row. Nathan picked up a one-day gig helping Alina build shelving at the coffee shop. $200 cash paid same day. I took on a rush project for a real estate agent in Gresham who needed Instagram content. $300 for 15 posts. I made them in one night, fueled by instant coffee and a feeling that hovered somewhere between determination and dread. One evening, while Nathan was on a call with a potential new client, I walked into the bathroom, shut the door, turned on the faucet and cried. Not the graceful kind. The kind where your whole body folds and the sound that comes out doesn't sound like you. I pressed my face into a towel and let it happen. The bathroom was small, white tile, yellowed grout, a faucet that dripped every 3 seconds. When I came out, Nathan was still on his call. I washed my face, opened my email. One new message from Miranda Cole. Your food cart campaign was surprisingly sharp. I've been watching your recent work. Come to my office Thursday, I might have something. I read it 3 times, then a 4th. I didn't know it yet, but that Thursday meeting would change the trajectory of everything. Miranda Cole worked out of a 3rd-floor office in a co-working space on southeast Belmont. The kind of building where every suite had a different startup name on the door, and the communal kitchen always smelled like someone's over-ambitious pour-over. Her office was small, immaculate, and deliberately spare. A standing desk, 2 chairs, a single orchid on the windowsill, and nothing on the walls except a framed cover of * Portland Business Monthly from 2016 with her name in the subheading. She was 54, silver bob cut with surgical precision, navy blazer over a white tee, no jewelry except a Cartier tank watch on her left wrist that caught the overhead light every time she moved her hand, which was often, because Miranda talked the way she worked. Direct, fast, no wasted motion. Your Big Mike's barbecue campaign increased their weekend foot traffic by 34%, she said before I'd fully sat down. I called Mike. He confirmed the numbers. That's not luck. She paused, looked at me the way a contractor looks at a load-bearing wall, assessing what it can hold. But your pricing is amateur. You charged $800 for work worth $5,000. You're not doing yourself any favors by being cheap. You're telling clients you don't believe in your own value. The words hit closer to home than she knew. Here, what I'm offering, I have 2 hospitality clients, a boutique hotel in the Pearl District and a bed and breakfast out in Hood River. Both need social media strategy and brand refreshes. I'll refer you if and only if you come back to me with a proper proposal, proper pricing, and a registered LLC, not a freelancer with an Upwork profile, a business. She checked her watch. You have 48 hours. I stood, my hands were shaking. Thank you, Miranda. Don't thank me, earn it, I don't refer sloppy work. I walked to my car, sat behind the wheel, and called Nathan. I need you to help me register an LLC tonight. That night, Nathan and I sat at the wobbly IKEA table with his laptop open to the Oregon Secretary of State website. The filing form for a limited liability company was surprisingly simple. Name, registered agent, address, purpose. The fee was $300. We had $900 in the account after rent. That's almost a third of what we have left, I said. It's an investment, Nathan said, not an expense. I typed the name into the field, Brennan Creative LLC. Nathan looked at me. You're using your family name. It's my name too, and I'm going to make it mean something different. He didn't argue. He clicked submit. $300 to file, more than half of what my mother thought I was worth at Vanessa's wedding. Over the next 48 hours, I built 2 proposals on Google Docs, one for the Pearl District Hotel, one for the Hood River Bed and Breakfast. I priced each project at $5,500. My fingers hesitated over the numbers. Miranda's voice echoed, you're telling clients you don't believe in your own value. I kept the price. I emailed both proposals to Miranda at 11:47 p.m. on Saturday, 13 minutes before her deadline. Monday morning, client 1, the Juniper Hotel in the Pearl District, replied, let's do it. Tuesday afternoon, client 2, Columbia Gorge B&B in Hood River, replied, can we start next week? $11,000 in the pipeline, more than I'd earned in any single month of my life. I quit the barista job that Friday. Alina hugged me over the espresso machine and said, go be somebody, hun, and send me a client if you can. I printed the LLC certificate at a FedEx office on Southeast Grand and pinned it to the kitchen wall right next to the $2,100 check from the cancelled hotel project. My wall of evidence, not a failure, of becoming. Things didn't get easy after that, they got fast. By August, 3 months after filing the LLC, Brennan Creative had 4 clients. Monthly revenue $28,000, I hired my first contractor, a copywriter named Jessica who just moved to Portland from Chicago and wrote headlines the way some people write poetry, clean, sharp, inevitable. I paid her fairly because I remembered what it felt like when someone didn't. October, 7 clients. Miranda introduced me to the Portland Hospitality Alliance, a network of hotel owners, restaurant groups and tourism boards who met quarterly over overpriced salads at a place on Northwest 23rd. She told me to prepare a 5-minute presentation on social media ROI for boutique properties. Don't charm them, she said, show them numbers. I stood in front of 40 people in a borrowed blazer and showed them numbers. My hands shook for the first 90 seconds. Then the data took over. Big Mike's foot traffic increase. The Juniper Hotel's 300% rise in Instagram engagement. Columbia Gorge B&B's direct booking revenue up 47% in 2 months. By the time I finished, 4 people had left their business cards on my chair. December, revenue for the month $45,000. I hired a second contractor, a graphic designer named Alex. We moved out of the studio on Division Street into a 1-bedroom apartment on Southeast Belmont. It had a separate room I could use as an office, a real desk, a real chair, and a bed, queen-size, solid oak frame from a local maker, that we assembled together on a Sunday afternoon while Nathan played vinyl on a Bluetooth speaker. Robert sent an email, "Merry Christmas, Chloe, I hope Portland is treating you well." I replied the first time in 7 months, "It is, Merry Christmas, Dad, short but not closed, not anymore." Every invoice I sent felt like a sentence in a letter I was writing to my future self. 1 year in Portland, Brennan Creative, 14 retainer clients, 3 full-time employees besides myself, and a revenue number I had to read 3 times on the spreadsheet before I believed it. $620,000 gross. Not profit, I want to be honest about that. After salaries, software, contractor fees, and taxes, the take-home was a fraction, but the trajectory was real. And for the first time in my life, the graph was pointing up because of something I'd built with my own hands. We leased a small office, 1,200 square feet on Southeast Belmont, a converted storefront with exposed ductwork, polished concrete floors, and a glass front door. Nathan designed the logo himself, Brennan Creative in clean sans serif, slate grey on white. We had it printed on the glass. The first morning, I stood on the sidewalk and watched the Portland sun hit those letters, and the light cast the name across the floor inside, like a shadow in reverse. That was the month Nathan proposed properly. We'd been engaged since before the wedding. That quiet Tuesday night proposal in Seattle felt like another lifetime, but we'd never had a ceremony. He took me to a rooftop bar overlooking the Willamette River at dusk, just as the city lights began to flicker on, and he said, "We should make this official. Not for anyone else, for us." We got married at the Multnomah County Courthouse on a Wednesday, 15 guests. Miranda was there in her navy blazer. Elena brought a cake she'd baked at the coffee shop. No Vera Wang, no imported orchids, no $300,000 budget, $180 filing fee and a promise. 2 weeks later, an email from Portland Business Monthly. "Ms. Brennan, you've been nominated for our annual 40 under 40 list. Would you be available for an interview?" I said yes. I had no idea who else would be in Portland by the time they held the ceremony. Vanessa moved to Portland in October, not by choice. Philip had been offered a position at a hospital system affiliated with Oregon Health and Science University. Offered was the word Vanessa used. I later learned the truth was less flattering. His department in Seattle had encouraged a transition after an HR complaint from a colleague. The details didn't reach me then. They didn't need to. The result was the same. Dr. Philip Ashford was relocating to Oregon, and Vanessa was following. They sold the Colonial in Medina. The house my parents had gift-wrapped with $300,000 closed at an $80,000 loss. The Seattle market had softened steadily since they'd bought, and they'd financed the rest at a rate that aged poorly. By the time the closing check cleared and the realtor took her cut, Vanessa and Philip walked away with almost nothing. $250,000 gone, not stolen, not gambled. Just slowly, quietly dissolved by a market that didn't care about wedding gifts or parental promises. Vanessa didn't know I was in Portland. I had no public social media under my personal name. Brennan Creative had a website and a business Instagram, but Vanessa wouldn't have been looking for a marketing agency. Our worlds didn't overlap, or so I thought. The overlap happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Margaret had flown in from Seattle to help Vanessa settle into their new rental. The 3 of them, Margaret, Vanessa, Philip, were driving south on Southeast Belmont when Vanessa pointed out the window. "That's a cute office space." Margaret looked up, saw the glass door, saw the name, Brennan Creative. She didn't speak. She picked up her phone, Googled, found the website, saw my photo on the About page. Chloe Brennan, founder and CEO. She set the phone in her lap, said nothing. My mother saw my name on that glass door, and for the first time in her life she had nothing to say. The Portland Business Monthly 40 Under 40 Gala was held on a Thursday evening in November at the Sentinel Hotel downtown. The grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers, 400 guests, founders, investors, tech executives, hospital administrators, city council members. Open bar, a jazz trio. Name tags printed on heavy card stock that felt like an invitation just to hold. I wore red. Not bright red, deep arterial red. A tailored blazer I'd had made by a seamstress on Southeast Hawthorne, the first piece of clothing I'd ever had custom fitted. Underneath, a simple black silk blouse, my hair pulled back in a clean low bun, red lipstick to match the blazer. Nathan was beside me in a navy suit, the first one he'd ever owned that wasn't rented. Miranda had picked the tie, charcoal slim, no pattern. You want them to remember your face, she told him, not your tie. We arrived at 7, checked in, found our table, number 3, front section. A year ago I'd been at table 16 by the service door. The math of that wasn't lost on me. Miranda was already seated at the VIP table, speaking to the editor-in-chief of Portland Business Monthly the way she spoke to everyone, like she was running a board meeting no one had called. What I didn't know as I adjusted my blazer and scanned the room was that 6 tables behind me, back section, near the bar, Philip Ashford was settling into a chair. The hospital system that had recruited him was a platinum sponsor of the event. He'd received an invitation through the medical staff liaison. Vanessa was in the chair beside him. And Margaret, who'd extended her trip to help Vanessa unpack boxes, sat between them, her champagne-coloured blouse the same shade she'd worn to Vanessa's wedding. The MC stepped up to the podium. The room quieted, and the names began. They called them alphabetically by last name. I listened to the letters climb. Adams, Chen, Donovan. Each honoree walked to the stage, shook the MC's hand, received a crystal award, said a few words. The audience clapped politely. Cameras flashed. Then the MC leaned into the microphone. Next, founder and CEO of Brennan Creative, one of Portland's fastest-growing hospitality marketing firms, with revenue exceeding $2.5 million in year 2, Chloe Brennan. 400 people applauded. I stood. My legs were steady. My hands were steady. 2 years ago, those hands had been gripping a $500 check in a Four Seasons ballroom. Tonight, they were smoothing the front of a red blazer that fit like it had been waiting for me. I walked to the stage. The spotlight was warm. The crystal award was heavier than it looked. 6 tables back near the bar, my mother's champagne flute stopped halfway to her lips. Vanessa turned to Margaret. Wait, Brennan Creative, is that Chloe? Margaret didn't answer. I stood at the microphone. I didn't look for them. I didn't need to. 2 years ago, I drove to Portland with $5,800 and a Toyota Corolla. My voice was clear. 400 faces looked up. I didn't have a backup plan. I had a partner who believed in me, a mentor who challenged me, and a decision to stop waiting for permission to build my own life. I paused, let the room hold it. Legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you build. The applause was louder this time. Nathan was on his feet. Miranda was nodding from the VIP table with the smallest smile, the kind she reserved for things that met her standard. I walked back to table 3, and as I sat, my eyes drifted across the room, across the 400 faces and the candlelight and the chandeliers, and landed for 1 second on my mother. She was looking at me. I held her gaze. I nodded once. Small, the way you acknowledge someone you recognize but haven't spoken to in a long time. Then I turned back to Nathan, and I let the evening continue without her. I heard what happened next from Aunt Carolyn, who heard it from Robert, who was home in Seattle but received a phone call from Margaret at 10:47 that night. The story traveled the way all Brennan stories travel, through the family telephone line, quietly with just enough detail to wound. The gala ended at 10. Vanessa and Margaret walked to the parking garage in silence, while Philip stayed behind to network, or whatever Philip called what he did when his wife wasn't watching. The parking garage was underground, concrete walls, fluorescent lights humming, no chandeliers, no string quartets, no Instagram filter that could soften what was about to happen. Vanessa sat in the driver's seat of her BMW, the X5 that was now 6 years old, a scratch along the rear quarter panel she hadn't bothered to fix, and she didn't start the engine. She stared at the steering wheel. She built a company, Mom. Her voice cracked on the word company asterisk. A real company. People stood up for her. 400 people clapped. She got lucky, Margaret said, automatic, reflexive, the same script she'd been running for 31 years. Lucky, Vanessa's head snapped toward her mother. We got $300,000 and I can't sell a house without losing money. Philip won't answer my calls after 9 p.m. I moved to a city where I don't know anyone. And she stood on that stage and she had asterisk everything asterisk. Her voice broke open. Mom, why don't I have that? The fluorescent light buzzed. Margaret looked at her hands. Her nails were perfect. They were always perfect, but her hands were still. I did what I thought was best, she said. For who? Vanessa whispered. The engine didn't start for a long time. 3 days after the gala, an email arrived. Not a text, not a voicemail, an email, because Robert Brennan was the kind of man who needed the structure of paragraphs to say what he couldn't manage out loud. Chloe, someone posted a clip of your speech online. I've watched it 11 times. I counted because your mother would say I'm exaggerating and I want to be precise for once. I should have stood up for you at the wedding. I should have said something when your mother handed you that envelope. I should have stood up for you your whole life. Every Thanksgiving, every phone call, every time she compared you to Vanessa, and I sat there eating my dinner like a coward. That's what I was. I want to name it because I think you deserve to hear me say it. I won't ask you to forgive me. I'll ask you to let me try to be better. If you ever want to have coffee. I'll fly to Portland, no conditions, no agenda. Just your dad being late to the only conversation that matters. I love you, I always did, I was just too quiet about it, Dad. I read it at my desk in the Southeast Belmont office. Morning light coming through the glass door. The shadow of Brennan Creative stretched across the concrete floor. I read it once, then again. Then I closed my laptop and pressed my hands flat against the desk and breathed. I cried. Not the bathroom floor kind from that night in May. This was different. This was the kind of crying that happens when something you stopped hopping for arrives anyway. Late, imperfect, but real. I replied that evening, I'd like that but coffee only and we go slow. Robert booked a flight to Portland that same night. Later, in a follow-up email, he wrote one more line. Your mother has been quiet since the gala. She hasn't said your name. I think for the first time she heard herself. 2 weeks after the gala, Vanessa's life completed its collapse. Not with a bang, but with an iPad left on a kitchen counter. The details came to me in pieces, again through Carolyn, who seemed to have become the family's unofficial wire service. Philip had been seeing a nurse practitioner at the hospital. Not a rumor, not a suspicion, but a chain of iMessage conversations that synced to the iPad he'd left charging next to the coffee maker. Vanessa opened it looking for a recipe app. She found 6 months of conversations instead. She filed for legal separation the following week. Oregon is a community property state, which meant the house, their Portland rental, wasn't the issue. It was the financial wreckage left from selling the Medina house. The remaining mortgage, the credit lines, the car payments, all had to be split. Attorney retainer, $18,000. Money Vanessa didn't have in liquid cash because her dermatology license hadn't transferred to Oregon yet, and Philip had been the primary earner since they'd moved. She called Margaret first. Mom, I need help. Can you and Dad? We already gave you $300,000, Vanessa. We don't have more. Your father is retiring. We have our own expenses. The same mother who'd funded a $300,000 wedding couldn't fund a divorce, or wouldn't. Either way, the vault was closed. Then Vanessa called me. I didn't answer. I was in a client meeting, an honest reason, though I'm not sure I would have picked up regardless. Her voicemail sat in my phone for 3 hours before I listened. Chloe, it's Vanessa. I know I don't deserve this call, but I don't know who else to call. I sat with it. Nathan found me on the couch that evening, phone in my lap, staring at nothing. I'm not going to rescue her, I said, but I'm not going to gloat either. Nathan nodded. That's the right line. It was, and I held it. 1 month after the gala, Brennan Creative signed its largest contract, a full rebrand for a chain of 10 boutique hotels across the Oregon coast. Website, social media, email marketing, photography, direction, the works. Contract value, $420,000, phased over 12 months. Portland Business Monthly ran a feature. The headline, How Chloe Brennan Built a $2.5 million agency in 2 years without a dollar from anyone. The journalist, a woman named Sarah who'd been at the 40 Under 40 gala, asked me about my background. I told her the truth minus the names. I said I'd come from a family that didn't believe in my career path. She wrote it as, Brennan launched Brennan Creative with no outside investment, no family backing and no safety net, just a laptop and a conviction that her work had value. That same month, we placed a billboard on Southeast Belmont. Standard advertising, part of a campaign to attract new hospitality clients. The design was simple. Brennan Creative's logo, a photograph of a hotel lobby we'd rebranded, and the tagline, Your story told right. I approved the placement for business reasons, but I won't pretend I didn't notice that the billboard stood 6 blocks from Vanessa's rental apartment, on the route she drove every day to the temporary clinic where she'd started consulting. Sometimes I wonder, if my mother had given me $300,000 instead of 500, would I be here? Would I have moved to Portland? Would I have registered an LLC on a kitchen table with $900 left in my account? Or would I have settled into something safe and never learned what I was capable of? I don't know the answer. But I think the fire matters more than the money. What do you think? Do the worst things that happen to us sometimes become the best? I'd love to hear your take in the comments. I didn't put that billboard up for my mother, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't smile when I drove past it. Robert made it happen. He called it coffee and he meant it literally. No family meeting, no therapy session, no ambush, just a table at a shop on Southeast Division, 4 blocks from where I'd once poured lattes for $13 an hour. I arrived first, ordered a black coffee, sat in the chair facing the door because I'd learned in 2 years to see what was coming. Margaret walked in at exactly 10 a.m. Her hair was grayer than I remembered, the ash blonde now silver at the temples. She wore a Burberry trench coat over a white blouse, but her handbag was old. The same coach bag she'd been carrying for 6 years. Something about the combination told me everything. The armor was the same, but the resources behind it had thinned. She sat down, ordered green tea, wrapped her hands around the mug like she needed something to hold. You look well, she said. I am well. Silence. The espresso machine hissed behind the counter. A woman at the next table was reading a novel and pretending not to listen. I didn't think you could do it, my mother said, not cruel this time, just honest. Maybe for the first time, I know, maybe I was wrong. I let those 4 words hang. They were the most she'd ever given me that wasn't wrapped in a condition. You were, I said, but I didn't build my company to prove you wrong. I built it because I needed to prove something to myself. I took a breath. I don't need an apology, Mom. I need you to stop telling people I left out of jealousy. That's the minimum. She nodded, her eyes reddened, not tears, not quite, but the closest I'd ever seen Margaret Brennan come to the border. If you want to know me, the real me, you can start by having coffee with me once a month, but you don't get to rank your daughters anymore. That system is over. 2 cups on a wooden table, same size, same saucer, no one's bigger. 6 months after that coffee shop, the scoreboard looked like this. Margaret and I had met 4 times, always coffee, always the same shop on Division Street. The conversations were short, 30 minutes, sometimes 40. She asked about the business. I told her what I felt like sharing. She didn't compare me to Vanessa, not once. I don't know if she'd changed or if she was simply performing change. And I decided that wasn't my problem to solve. My job was to hold the boundary. Her job was to respect it. Robert flew to Portland in January. He sat at a picnic table at a barbecue joint on North Williams with Nathan and me, a tray of brisket on brown paper between us, and he cried. Not dramatically. Robert doesn't do anything dramatically, but quietly, his shoulders shaking, his napkin pressed against his eyes. I'm proud of you, he said. I should have been saying that for 29 years. I reached across the paper and held his hand. Nathan put a brisket rib on his plate and said, Eat, Robert, it's better when it's warm. My father laughed through his tears. It was the best meal I'd had in Portland. Vanessa's divorce was finalized in March. She sold what little remained of the joint assets, absorbed the $80,000 housing loss, and moved into a small apartment in southeast Portland. 900 square feet, no marble countertops, no wolf range. She was consulting at a dermatology clinic 3 days a week while waiting for her Oregon license to clear. For the first time in her life, she was paying her own electricity bill. She texted me in April. I'm sorry for what I said at the wedding and for the Instagram post. I was protecting something that was never real. I replied the next morning, I know, if you want to get coffee sometime, let me know. No hug, no tearful reunion, just 2 sisters for the first time on level ground. It's a Tuesday morning. I'm standing in the Brennan creative office, 1,500 square feet now, expanded into the suite next door. 7 employees, 2 conference rooms, a wall of framed client work that Jessica calls the gallery. Morning light comes through the glass front door, and the logo casts its shadow across the polished concrete. The way it did that first morning, except now there are more desks, more chairs, more evidence that something I once dreamed about on an air mattress became real. On the wall behind my desk, 3 things are pinned: the LLC certificate from the Oregon Secretary of State dated 2 years ago, a little creased at the corners, the $2,100 check from Jeffrey, the first client who cancelled, the first real payment, the first real lesson. Still has my Sharpie note beside it. First real payment, first real lesson. And the Crystal Award from Portland Business Monthly's 40 Under 40. It catches the light every afternoon around 4 and throws small rainbows across the filing cabinet. Jessica says it's the office's best feature. I think she's right. The $500 check is not on the wall. I tore it up a long time ago. I don't need to keep evidence of what someone thought I was worth. I keep evidence of what I built. Nathan walks in with 2 coffees, one black, one with oat milk. He sets mine on the desk, kisses the top of my head, and sits in the chair across from me. We look out the window at Southeast Belmont. The billboard is still there, your story told right. And below it, Portland moves the way it always does, fast, bright, indifferent to who you were before you got here. My mother gave me $500 and told me that was all I deserved. She was right about one thing. I did deserve exactly what I got, not the $500. The fire, some people inherit their legacy, I built mine. And I built it with the 2 things my parents never gave me, belief and a fair chance. That's my story. If you've ever been the other one in your family, the one who wasn't the favorite, who wasn't the investment, I want you to know something. Your value doesn't come from their approval. It comes from what you build when no one's watching. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe and leave a comment. I read every single one. And if you want another story about someone who turned their family's doubt into fuel, check the link in the description.